Yo.
Welcome back.
I'm Ian.
I'm Steve.
So this is Downbelow still, an RPG we're making about a dystopian future. So we're talking about the system and when to use it. Today, the main focus of our inquest is when does the narrative call for you to use it to emphasize that struggle that the players should feel their characters are going through, and when are they already struggling enough, or when is it not enough of a struggle to warrant it?
The shoe is on the other foot, by the way. If you have missed the last couple of days, take a look back. We've just talked about times when players can, through their own personal skill and ingenuity, sometimes bypass the need for a trait expenditure for a success. Mm-hmm. So we're looking at it the other way around this time.
So there are two big variants of this. There's the walking across the street question of when does a mundane task become difficult enough to warrant being important to the story. That one's got a relatively simple answer that we will expand on, which starts with when you say it is, and we'll expand on that. And
there's an analog to that one, which is the window shopper problem. And that we're going to talk about using successes as a way to press the you get there button.
Then there's the other end of the question of, well, what if the situation, without having called the system into question, is already doing what, and this is pretty specific to our system, the system is supposed to mediate, which is the PCs get some of what they want, but also some icky, nasty vegetables on their plate that they don't want to eat, but they have to have them if they're going to have their dessert. So
that metaphor went places.
I decided not to go vulgar and go more 7-year-old.
All right.
So let's start by unpacking when you say it does, and relating that to the window shopper problem.
So, when do you have to use a trait? You use a trait when there's a problem that needs solving. That's very simple. However, some problems are very trivial. I want to go grab a burger. I am on the north side of the street. Burger King is on the south side of the street. This is a problem. I can't grab my burger. Obviously, that takes a success or a roll in other systems.
Or does it? Is it important that you're going to be crossing the street and getting a burger right now?
If there's no hurry and a controlled intersection and the drivers are being even relatively conscientious, you wait for the stoplight, walk across the street, grab your burger, have enough money in your wallet to pay for it, and everything is... Oh, they have a burger to sell you, and everything is fine. This is 98% of the time in real life.
And the only time any of these things is going to change in the role-playing game context is when you, the GM, decide, I want something interesting to happen based on the fact that one of these things might not be true.
Exactly. You're chasing down a deadline, well, suddenly you might need to spend a success to go in, quickly grab a bite to eat without being delayed by something. Traffic is bad and you are rushing across the street in a hurry. You might get hit by a car or otherwise be unable to cross. Someone is watching you with a sniper rifle from a bell tower. No, not really, and just in this hypothetical example. You may need to spend a success to leave the safety of the awnings and rush across the street without being noticed. There's all sorts of things, but what they all have in common is they're complicated. They add wrinkles to the situation that make it more than just a trivial task. And thus, to accomplish it without setback, you are going to need to spend a success, because if you don't spend a success, something bad will happen.
And all of those complications and wrinkles, and the fact that you need to avoid something bad by spending a success, all come back to the GM deciding this is going to create an interesting development in the plot that I am involving my players in. You don't just do it because you can, you do it because you want the consequences.
Speaking of interesting observations in this case, it's important to note that you're not actually spending the success to cross the street. You're spending the success to avoid the obstacles. The crossing the street is as simple as crossing the street. Now, if your character is crippled in some way, if they cannot walk, or if they cannot physically cross the street, then yeah, you might be actually spending the success to cross the street. But in a way, that's still spending the success not to get across the street, but to negate the obstacle holding you back.
And to get the thing that you wanted in the story, which in our Burger King example is sustenance so that you can continue with your day. And sometimes it's to get it before other things that you need to happen, etc.
So here's a rule we're going to codify really quick. If there are no obstacles, there is no need to spend a success, even if the player thinks they want to.
They get it done.
Yep.
Speaking of they get it done, define the window shopper problem for us in one sentence.
It's going to take more than one sentence.
Well, try to pack it down to as short a paragraph as you can.
Okay. We like role-playing. We would not be doing this if we didn't like role-playing. Every group, however, has that someone who likes role-playing way too much. In the middle of downtime, when they are trying to resupply their supplies, you get the following exchange. So I'm going to walk down to Macys, and I'm going to look in the window. What are the mannequins wearing this time of year? What color are the dresses? Are they posed nicely? Is that shop girl I like still working there? What's on sale at the in-store restaurant? In fact, what's on sale, period? I want some special deals on this one. Before you know it, these perfectly reasonable questions have turned into, in this case it's a problem because it's a complete monopoly on GM description and attention. And the player is probably going to be upset in one of two ways, because either the GM is not going to give them the attention they want, or in giving them the attention they want, they are going to either be stuck making progress so slow because you're cutting away to other player characters while this person is still having the entrance of the store described, or the other players are going to be upset because the game stops while you deal with this person's need to roleplay every square foot of Macys department store.
The way that you cut through this is, ironically, by making them roll for it, or in our system, making them spend for it. So if they want to investigate the special deals at Macys, then you make them spend a success on investigation or persuasion or whatever trait they want to use to interact with the shop girl or the shop and find all those special deals at this fancy shop. And
this
will do two things. One, it will allow you to spend a finite amount of time on this person while still satisfying their need to have some attention. And two, it will restrict them from going any further with it, because you will have demarcated that they have already gotten everything they can get from this situation by spending that trait.
Speaking of traits, here is an interesting situation. What happens when you have someone who is a dedicated bargain hunter but has no related traits? Well, put simply, everyone actually has an infinite possible number of traits, or rather, here's a potential. You can take the principle behind the right thing, right time, everyone gets it, and apply that to other traits as well. In this case, let's say you wanted to spend your weapon maintenance skill in order to get deals on clothes. What this would represent is you're actually not using your weapon maintenance skill to shop for clothes. That's not directly applicable. What you are doing is saying, instead of taking time is the key word, to maintain my weapons, I am spending it clothes shopping. I have used up my weapon maintenance screen budget because I'm busy shopping at Macys instead of in the shop keeping my guns clean. This is not a common use of traits, but it is a legitimate use of traits. In this case, you are defining that you are neglecting the trait and thus expending it to get a success somewhere else.
It requires that extra step of explanation of, I am expending this to say the maintenance is done so quickly that I can spend this extra time.
Or alternately, I'm neglecting the maintenance so I can spend this extra time. Either way, until you take a failure, you can't recharge that trait.
So that is about as much as we can fit in, and probably more than our usual video on this subject.
We get passionate sometimes. Please forgive us.
And we hope you'll stick with us for our next subject. Thanks for falling through the cracks.